President Trump declaring a victory after his Supreme Court win on legal injunctions.
This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades. And we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. We can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis.
Lara Trump, host of My View with Lara Trump, joins us now. So great to see you this morning. Let's start with this issue of nationwide injunctions that have been issued by federal district courts against presidents lately. President Bush saw 6, Obama saw 12, President Trump saw 64 in his first term, Joe Biden saw 22, and Trump saw 40 just in the first year alone, first 6 months alone of his first term.
Yeah, Charlie tells you exactly what we all know already, which is that, you know, none of this should have been happening, and it was targeted specifically at President Trump. Look, this was such a big win and such a good moment, not just for the president, but really for America. And I think that it was probably the final nail in the coffin to so much of the lawfare that this president in particular has endured. We know that first it was you know, directed at him personally, his family, his company, and obviously we remember about a year ago, all of that was still going on. This one was directed, though, at the American people. And why? It's because President Trump is the one from the Oval Office who was making these decisions, who was making these calls, and they were trying to thwart the will, these federal judges, of the American people. They voted him into office. They wanted these things done. And it's so refreshing that the Supreme Court came down with this decision. So, look, it's such a big win. Again, I'll say it, but I wish that some of these people who had obviously suffer from Trump derangement syndrome to such a high degree spent half of their time doing their job, putting actual criminals behind bars versus fighting President Trump. Think about, Charlie, what we could accomplish as a country and how much better off we'd be if these people actually focused on doing what they were elected to do.
Well, precisely. Not only is Trump winning in the courts, he's obviously winning majorly, bigly, as he likes to say, in politics. A new election data reveals that President Trump's base grew younger and more diverse in 2024. If you look into the numbers of Biden's 2020 voters, 79% returned and voted for Harris, 5% switched, 15% just stayed home. Of Trump's 2020 voters, 85% voted for him again, 3% switched to Harris, and 11% didn't come home. So he's winning not only at the courts, but also in politics.
Yeah, and he also saw huge shifts with these very specific voting blocks, you know, that the Democrats really felt like they owned for so long. You look at young voters, especially young men, 18 to 24 years old, they came out in such a big way for this president. And I think the opportunity that the GOP has right now, and I hope everyone is listening to this, is that some of these people came out for the first time and voted for a Republican. We have an opportunity now to keep those voters. What President Trump is doing, my gosh, Charlie, look at just this week alone, the wins he scored for the American people. But the Republican Party, I think, as a whole, has an opportunity to keep these voters long term, to keep them for the midterms, to keep them for the next presidential election. And look, they gave us an opportunity to President Trump because he was authentic. He was refreshing. He was willing to go on Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan and reach out there. So I think we're going to see more wins like this and more polling, hopefully, in the future for Republicans like this.
He knows who he is, and he knows what he thinks, and he's not afraid to share it. And you bring up a really important point. Among new voters who, you know, you would think would be most affected by the insanely negative press coverage, Trump even manages to win, to beat Harris in 2024 among new voters, 14% to 12%.
Yeah, and a lot of these people, you have to remember, are seeking alternative forms of getting their information. You know, they're going online, they're listening, like I said, to these podcasts, and unfortunately for the legacy media, they don't trust these people anymore. My gosh, look at how wrong they've been about so much over the past decade, really. And so it's because of that that I think, you know, they gave President Trump a chance. They said, you know what, this is a person who's saying the things I want to hear, who's talking about how he can make life more affordable for me, how my family can purchase our first home, how, you know, if I'm a kid coming out of college, I'm going to be able to get a great paying job, an American job here in this country. Those are the things President Trump was talking about, and it really resonated in a big way with so many people.
Lara Trump, thank you so much. It sounds like you've got a great show tonight. Who have you got on tonight?
We have a huge show tonight. I have an exclusive, very first interview they've done yet with the Chrisley family. Todd and Julie Chrisley, of course, were pardoned by President Trump. And I think a lot of people saw that video of him calling Savannah their daughter, who was such an advocate for them. And they sit down with me, the whole family, for their first interview. And I'll tell you, one of the most impressive things to me was to hear how being in prison really impacted Todd and Julie. They have come out now with a charge to help the people. They really want to focus on prison reform. The people they left behind there, they said, look, we are not going to forget about these individuals. We want to see the right thing happen, not just for us, but for them too. They talk about the fact they were apart for 2 years and what it was like the first time they saw each other so much. It's at 9 p.m. tonight. I'm so excited to share it with everybody.
Thank you so much, Lara.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.